the Geotech investigation by Army Corps hit a snag, and that was the right of entry permit from state parks. The basis of that was a map that showed up kind of late in the information gathering process, well after the coastal consistency determination hearing of May 13th back up in, I think that was Santa Cruz where we're at. The fact that it's now the beach area is identified as a natural preserve by state parks meant there was no allowance for motorized vehicles to be out there. Of course, the tracked equipment that the Corps was proposing to use there was considered a motorized vehicle by state parks. Despite a number of efforts, I think, by the Corps to address that issue, there was another impediment as far as potential, what they were calling the exploitation of a resource and that was associated with probably a 2 to 4 inch diameter core sample. They called that an exploitation of a resource. I didn't agree with that, but I'm not an attorney, and the October 31 deadline went past the Corps. That deadline was set by the Coastal Commission back in May to avoid potential impacts to migrating steelhead. So they only had the September-October window to work with. So to make a long story short, because of that lack of a right of entry by state parks to the Army Corps, the work is incomplete still. So we're brainstorming, our next steps. With the Army Corps, what's going to happen next on that particular effort? How do we address that concurrently with developing various alternatives? As you know, the Army Corps has 2 contracts in place, one with CDM to start developing preliminary alternatives to go into an EIS document. So that's hung up at the moment as far as that particular location. And the Corps also has the Chambers group, so they're working closely. I think there was quite a discussion at the last meeting, as I recall, as far as the coordination between the environmental work and the design work. That is ongoing, although it's very preliminary in its efforts at this point. So that's the gist of what's happened on that project. We're going to leads and try to get creative, and how do we approach it now, given that set of circumstances. But it definitely was a setback for the Army Corps, and I can tell you they're pretty frustrated over the whole process that's happened today. But we'll keep persevering on it and do our best to come up with some alternative approaches to work around that. So that's pretty much where we're at, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions of the district engineer?